This true story is a terrifying reminder of what can happen when you are miles from help. A cabin in the woods. The Bennett family, a young couple, Jessica and Stephen Bennett, and their 4-year-old daughter Lily, had decided to escape the city for a quiet weekend in the mountains of Idaho. They rented a small secluded cabin deep in the wood, far from anyone or anything. The cabin sat at the edge of the dense forest, surrounded by tall pine trees, with no phone service and the nearest neighbor several miles away. It was the perfect spot to unwind, also thought. The local in the nearby town spoke about the cabin in whispers. It had a reputation of bad luck, with rumors of strange happening that had never been fully explained. No one has stayed there for long, and those who did left with unsettling story about hearing strange noise in the wood and seeing shadowy figure moving between trees at night. The Bennett family, city folks at heart, brushed off this warning as nothing more than just a superstition. After all, they were there to relax and enjoy a peaceful weekend in the nature. The first day was uneventful. The family settled in, enjoying the quiet with nothing but the sound of wind rustling through the trees and birds singing in the distance. But then, night fell. The sense of peace slowly turned into unease. It started with a soft tapping sound coming from outside the cabin, like something was brushing against the window or tapping on the wooden walls. Jessica and Stephen initially thought it was just tree branches swaying in the winds, but when they checked, there was nothing. The tapping continued throughout the night, unnerving them but never giving them a clear answer as to what it was. Lily, their daughter, woke up crying in the middle of the night, claiming she had seen a man standing outside her window, staring at her through the glass. Her parents reassured her it was just a bad dream, but Jessica couldn't shake the feelings that something was watching them. The next morning, Stephen found a bloody footprint leading from the edge of the wood to the back of the cabin. They weren't human footprint, but rather a large animal print, maybe a wolf or a deer, but there was no sign of any wounded animal nearby. The print just stopped at the back door, as if whatever it was had stood there watching the family inside before retreating into the woods. Despite a growing sense of unease, the family stayed. They stayed. Jessica and Stephen convinced themselves this was just a wild animal passing through and they were overreacting. Okay, but as the day wore on, things became strange. They found more signs of blood near the cabin, splatters on the trees and on the dirt, but no animal or source of the blood anywhere to be found. The forest seemed to close in on them, darker and more oppressive as the hours passed. That night, everything unraveled. The strange noises from the first night returned, but this time they were louder and more frantic. It sounded like something was circling the cabin, tapping on the wall, dragging its claws across the wood. Jessica and Stephen tried to ignore it, but then came again the sound of a heavy footstep on their porch, as if someone or something was standing right outside their door. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the front door, followed by the sound of the shattered glass. Someone or something had broken the window in the living room. In a panic, Stephen grabbed a fire poker to defend his family, but when he went to check, there was nothing. The living room window was broken, shards of glass scattered on the floor, and a trail of blood leading back into the forest. Fearing for their life, the family tried to barricade themselves in the bedroom, but as they moved through the cabin, the door to the back room burst open. A man covered in blood, wide-eyed and feral, stumbled into the room. He looked like he had been living in the woods for weeks, with matted hair, torn clothes, and crazed expression. And in his hand, he held a large rusted knife. Before Stephen could react, the man lunged at him. The struggle was brutal. Stephen fought with everything he had, but the intruder was unrelenting. He slashed and stabbed with a wide precision, leaving Stephen gravely injured. Jessica tried to protect Lily, but the intruder turned his attention to them. His eye fixated on the child. Just when it seemed like all hope were lost, the man suddenly stopped, as if he had been summoned by something outside. He turned and fled into the night, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. Jessica managed to call for help after the attack, and the local authorities arrived the next morning. What they found was horrifying. The cabin was drenched in blood, but the intruder was nowhere to be found. Despite the extensive search of the area, the man was never caught. Locals speculate that he had been living in the forest for years, surviving off the land, possibly hunting unexpected traveler who ventured too close to his territory. The Bennett family survived, but they were forever changed by their experience. The locals who had warned them about the cabin believe that the blood-covered man was part of a dark legend that surrounded the area. A former resident of the cabin who had gone mad years earlier and disappeared into the forest, only to return occasionally to torment those who stayed in his old home. The cabin was eventually abandoned, left to rot in the middle of the wood, a place no one dared to venture again. The story of the Bennett family terrifying ordeals became part of the local folklore, a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the most remote places. The blood-soaked mystery of the man in the woods remains unsolved to this day, leaving behind a lingering question. Was he truly human? Or was it something else, something darker, drawn to the isolation and blood of the lonely cabin in the middle of nowhere?